Yeah, a long way from a stuttering kid. I didn't get enough love.
Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of the How Men Cry podcast. I go by the name of Dxtr Spits, and the How Men Cry campaign and podcast is just focused on getting more men to talk comfortably about vulnerability, mental health, and just their personal journeys through whatever this world is as a man. Today, very graciously, we'll ask to enter into the room. Good homie Sean Hill, how you doing, man?
Man, it is wow. It is good to be here, and already you got deep with that. Just whatever this world is, you already blew my mind already, brother. That was nice. I'm already wow.
Well, I've been it's funny because I've been reading a bunch of random books, but some of the most recent stuff that I've been looking into is just a lot about culture and just really been realizing I've known and think about things are being conditions for us all, but when you really dig into more and more and more cultures, I'm like, man, we didn't made up every little rule about everything. So it's just interesting to start to dissect and look at the narratives. But enough about that because this is going to be
Yeah.
about you. So we, but hopefully that's a good segue into the conversation.
Absolutely.
But yeah, could you tell the good people at home just about who you are, and you can answer that however you want to.
Man, you know what? My name's Sean Hill, and I love life. I say that's the first thing I know, and at the same time, my journey in this life has taken me into arts, into dialogue that I never thought I would have with people, and I'd say between poetry and acting, those are the two main ways that I think uh, have come to define me. But at the same time, above it all, I know I'm a human being, just like you were saying, having this experience in life, and I really try to look at things at face value on that, and then dive deeper from there. So yeah, I mean everything between I'd even say comics and the love of superheroes and things like that to love of laughter and thought, like those things I feel like really define me and as a human being. And then accolade wise, I've done a TED talk and I've done things um that are have gone around the world in terms of poetry and acting, but at the same time I stay pretty anchored to doing humanitarian causes as well, and helping build schools, for example, things like that. So I'm kind of like wherever life like needs help or needs focus, that's kind of where I've been kind of aiming my own light at, so to speak. So yeah, I want world peace through inner peace on this planet in a fun way, and that's what I'm about, man. Like that's basically me in a nutshell.
Yeah, man, and that's awesome. I mean, I love several things about what you said. What was probably most interesting is that uh, you didn't really mention any. I mean, you very lightly mentioned what you did in terms of like some of your work within the arts, but most of what you seem to resonate with, I would view it as who you truly are in terms of what motivates you in life. So I just appreciate that because I think sometimes we get too tied up in the titles of things. I'm of this, I'm of that, and I didn't seen the resume, so you might have glossed over it a little bit for the
Hmm.
good people at home. But I know that you've definitely had some great successes in life. So I just definitely appreciate the way that you even spoke to all of that. So when did you first find writing, and or I maybe even a better word would be your connection to the arts?
Oh, good question. Alrighty, we diving in. So I'd say, yeah, with my brother at a young age, he would start sharing with me these rap poems as early as I can remember. And they were disturbing, they were beautiful at the same time. I always remember this one line where he described himself. He said, I feel like a demon with angel wings, like things like that were like, a horn demon, but with angel wings or something like that. And I always remember that duality that he would present in his work that really summed up the kind of feelings of a teenager at the time going through life and experiencing this life. And this was during the transition of where he was joining a gang and just getting just caught up at the wrong place, wrong time kind of things, wrong people, wrong places, lot of wrong things there, but in terms of what he was good-hearted at the core of it, and our, we had a family of love and all that. So you'd be surprised to, like, to see your own relative get caught up in something like that. And I think the poetry was an outlet for him, and I always could see it. I could see him feel better and express himself better whenever he did that in front of me. And then I'd want to do it. I'm like, yo, that was kind of dope. Like, I want to I want to do that. Like, that was man, he made it rhyme too. What? Like, of course, rhyming is like the most magical thing, right, for us in the
Yeah.
world. It was really just really special to see that. And I remember the first rhymes that I was doing was very it was it was super basic, low key stuff. And I was rhyming. I remember Independence Day. I remember the movie Independence Day came out, I don't know how long ago. And I remember that as being one of my earliest like rap poems I ever wrote. Um, and it was something like, me, Will Smith, and Jeff Goldblum are gonna hit these aliens in the face and wipe them out of space. Like, it was ridiculous. It was just it was so bad.
Bars, hashtag
Yeah.
bars out there, y'all.
Right?
It's on hell.
Yeah, we're gonna your menace is gonna be erased. Like, it was bad. It was like anyway, so I remember writing stuff like that. I remember even getting caught up in some of that early gangster rap and pretending to write like gangster bars, which apparently you can see I'm not. There's nothing gangster here at all. And so I went through that phase until I really found myself writing about what I really feel or really think, right? And I think it wasn't until high school that I really dove into what it meant to write poetry. And I had a great creative writing teacher to this day. I still visit this guy and say what's up to him, Mr. Klima. Good man, good times. And he was one of those people that encourage every time I wrote something, he said something positive about it and constructive about it. And even until college, until I got into it professionally, I just had a deep love for it, for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, again, several things that I love of that the journey that you're kind of speaking to is like, you know, I think one, it sounds like a really early resiliency factor. There's in terms of something that was a true outlet, for you, or something that you kind of picked up. And what's kind of fascinating is almost that like mentorship intro,
Mm,
just from the brother, and then also later the teacher. And I think that's what's like so amazing about a lot of this stuff.
yeah,
Um, and I mean, you really start to see the impact of just small influences like that within your life, and that potentially changed the entire trajectory. Because imagine if one of those figures or something would have been more negative
wow,
towards your thought or your ability to be a poet or something. So that's just really cool. That those things have kind of stuck out, and then ultimately helped you to kind of push through, and be very successful with it. So that's just really dope.
yeah. Thanks,
Um,
man. You know what? Real quick, I know
yeah,
you
yeah,
said that thing
please.
about mentorships, and I don't think I. That's something I could always take in more. Like, I could. That's something
Mm,
I've always been able to appreciate more. Because I know those friends of mine, or even some of my clients or people I met that were always like, you know what? I always loved poetry. I don't know why I stopped writing, right? And then once we would dig deeper into that, and then they'll have that memory. They'll be like, "Oh, that's right. There was that teacher that gave me that bad grade on a poem, and I felt awful ever since then. I didn't want to write." Or there was one time I remember a friend of mine said, I shared a poem with my boyfriend at the time, and he didn't know how to respond to a poem. He didn't know how to support what I was like expressing or saying, and then I just felt closed off. Since then, I didn't want to share anymore after that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, especially when it's those kind of significant people in your life that say something or don't know how to say something, and you're looking for that or expecting that. I'm definitely grateful to have shared my poetry with people that even if they didn't know what it was, they would still say like, "Oh, like, why did you write that?" Or like, "What does that mean?" At least they would be curious, right? And I think that was a big part of it too. Just that, like you said, the encouragement factor for sure. And then even if someone didn't know, like, just to be curious and ask a question, or like, who is that you were talking about? What does that part mean, or what does that metaphor mean? Like stuff like that was really helpful too.
Yeah, I mean, so do you think that was just, just kind of like, was that the general kind of environment that you were raised in, or was that maybe even just more so you being selective of who you share those early gifts with?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely private. I definitely didn't share it at all. I was such some people they get surprised to hear this. I was definitely an introvert, like big
Yeah,
introvert earlier on. And even then, once I did warm up to someone or feel open and I could be silly or myself more, um, even that was kind of tough, I think. I remember being, yeah, I would say selective is a good word for it, but then also I would get to that carefree burst zone of just being silly and outgoing and just wanting to share anything and everything. And and I think, yeah, you're making me really dig into the archives, man. Because
I just be
all
trying to, what I'm saying? I
right,
just try to somebody. It's just funny because Audrey and I, the creative director, she was talking about it. She's like, "You be having people go into it," but it really, I mean, a lot of it's curiosity for me, because
yeah,
I can relate to a lot of it. But
mm,
it's fascinating to see that outcome. So not to cut into the story, but
no, no, of course. And
yeah,
even then, I'm like, I'm really good with interjections and going back and forth because I think that's also how we dig deeper into conversations we might not even know we would have,
yeah,
So I'm good with that. And I think, yeah, I think that just the last thing is that my parents definitely they were supportive of my art and my exploration of it. And I remember even getting older when I was like, this was probably less than even 10, 15 years ago. They would tell me that, like, my dad had said one time, he's like, yeah, I auditioned for a play one time. I was like, no, no, I didn't know that, Dad. That's never come up like
I
ever.
don't know what it
Right?
is about that generation and just
Yeah.
excluding information. Like it's literally like
Right.
they just be like, yeah, you mess around, start a business. They'd be like, well, I had a business for 14 years. You're like, when? When did you have it? And why have you not shared these? I don't know what that. I've experienced that too, and
Right.
I'm
Okay.
starting to feel like it's like generate. I'm like, y'all don't talk about nothing, huh?
Yeah, yeah. Unless it comes up or it just breezes through your mind, you don't really need to talk about. I get it. All right,
It's
cool.
strange. It's
That's cool.
strange, man.
Yeah. And my mom also had said one year, she had said, "Oh yeah, you know what? I think I did write a poem before, and it was she said, and it was selected for something of like the high school that she was in, or it was like published in the year, but I forgot where, like where
Yeah,
or how, but it was a pretty cool like little big deal, And I was
yeah.
like, "Oh, mom, I didn't like you were writing poetry, like I didn't even know, like
You're like we connect. We connect. I
we're
didn't
gonna
know.
we are related, we're related."
you know. No, I mean I love that. I mean, and honestly, and I think what also is because I just to share a bit on my side, like my
Yeah, yeah.
introductions to poetry, writing music, other things like that were more so outlets because like I had just a lot of frustration going on and I actually stuttered really bad when I was a kid. So it was a means of kind of outlet in that way where it remained very, very private, for me. And there were a few couple shared times like I can definitely, resonate with. I've had a couple of mentors or a couple of intros that
Mm.
encouraged me enough to want to actually keep going with things. So it's really,
Nice, nice.
it's just really great to hear it. Now,
Yeah,
a
yeah.
question,
And give me a pound real quick. Give me a pound real quick.
yeah,
Virtual pound
we
because
can get
speech
the,
impediment club. I had a speech impediment as well where
mm,
I don't think I was even talking for like a year or two um after when I should be talking. And
mm,
then I had like I would say certain words or certain things just differently. I would say like apple juice, apple juice, and I couldn't
yeah,
like pronounce certain words right. And I even went to like a speech teacher for all that stuff way
yeah.
early when I was like super young. So, I love bonding with people on that.
You like we
Like
in
what? Oh, so good.
Nah, man, for real. And so it kind of makes me wonder, and within the spirit of, the combos that we're having for How Men Cry, did you ever feel any type of pressure or or encourage. I'd say not to try to aim it at what your answer will be. It can be either positive or negative, but maybe with the connection of you going into the arts as a young man, did you feel any type of pushes, any type of ways, or do you feel like maybe you were relatively accepted along the way? I'm just
Mm.
curious about it.
And accepted in a general way? You mean by family or by audiences or?
Yeah, yeah, family audiences, because I've heard just a range of scenarios of what people's intros are going into the arts,
Yeah.
and I mean maybe even if it's not even focused on gender, just maybe outlook of the type of profession that you're going for.
My gosh, that is the most nuanced question I've ever heard. That was the most considerate, consensual question. Wow. Yeah, hashtag consent on that question. Thank you. You said it could be positive or negative. I felt like that was a non-binary way of asking that question.
Well, because I don't like to. This is why though. It's because I
Wow.
don't like to. I don't like to push in an
Yeah.
assumed narrative. I want to,
Right.
I want to know what actually happened with you. I don't want to, you know what I mean?
Wow. Wow.
So,
Yeah, just the it's of the whatever the is
yeah.
happened, right? Like that's super wonderful. Okay. So yeah, I think there were a couple things that factored in there because I did feel like growing up, emotion, but especially with my dad, of course, like
Mm,
stereotypically, right? It was one of those like he was one of those fathers that did say those things of, I'll give you something to cry about, right? Like those kind
mm,
of like emotionally suppressed or repressed kind of things I
mm,
definitely were brought up around, but at the same time, my mom was a great balance where I could let that out and not feel judged or not, feel weird about it. And I'm grateful for that balance big time. And I think if anything, I've been called emotional or sensitive before in my life or too sensitive, right?
yeah.
And and the funny thing is, of course, in the arts, that's what they
That's
love. Like
it's
that's
like it's like the jam. Yeah. If
that is the whole like
you're like, oh great,
no
you're
one
saying
no
that.
one ever liked a great actor who couldn't emote. Like
Yeah.
I've never like it was the most ironic turnaround I've ever seen in my life.
Mm,
And especially with poetry as well, right? Like if someone read a poem and they're like, "Oh, that's nice." Like, no, like you want to feel something. You want to feel connected to someone. You want to see the vulnerability spill on the page. You want to see someone's good, bad, and ugly. You want to see and feel all of that in the arts, right? And I
yeah.
think at the same time, when I was transitioning into like accepting myself as an artist and really believing that, or like people would call me a poet. I'm like, oh, that's a lot of responsibility. Or an actor, like,
Mm,
oh, can I say that yet? Right? That transition, I started learning from the right people again about actually the fact that you do it and you care about it means that you're an artist.
yeah.
That was the bottom line for a lot of things and a lot of people. And I was
Mm,
starting to kind of subscribe to that philosophy.
mm,
And then the more digging I did into what emotions were, especially connecting to art. Dang, there was a really painful blend of an experience where I had an argument with my dad, and he said this thing when I started crying and feeling like just overwhelmed in this conversation, in this argument.
mm,
And it was getting bigger. We were outside, we were like yelling, and I started just breaking down a little bit.
mm.
And he looked at me and he said, "Oh, you're gonna use your acting stuff on me?
Oh
You're gonna use that
no.
on me now?"
Oh no. I'm
And I was
sorry,
like,
man.
"Oh," like I had to take a minute
Oh
because it was
no.
one of those things where
Yeah.
like shook me out of the moment, and
I'm
it gave
sorry to
me
hear that, man.
thanks, man. No, thanks for that. It was. I mean, thankfully, I've had some years to dive into
Yeah,
this
yeah,
because
that's
man, when it
yeah.
happened though, it was such a like a shock slap, like gut punch, all of that. But then I saw him more clearly. I
Mm,
started noticing that people that react to emotion and the way they react to someone else's emotion, it tells me a lot more about them than me, you know?
man, first of all, I mean, that literally, it was shocking to hear, honestly, like the response. That's not, I was, following with the story, but
Yeah.
that's not what I would have, and I don't know him, so I don't know the context. I'm like, geez, man. But, something extremely powerful about what you just said. Like, there's an analogy that I love that says, like, the color of the paint inside the can is like ultimately going to be the color of the walls. So, and that's that. I mean, exactly what you said is what that, reminds me of. And I'm glad it sounds like, you've been able to maybe heal from that circumstance. And like you said, you learned a lot more about him than you, which seems like a really healthy way to,
Yeah.
process it. So
Big time.
yeah,
Big time.
just
It was
way
so
to go
like,
with that, man.
thanks, man. Thanks. What? You were supportive. Way too much supportive of an interview right now. This is a great, this is a great discussion, man. This is
Man,
great.
we're changing how we talk about this stuff, man. It's
Yeah,
just,
I appreciate that
you
big time,
know,
man.
yeah.
But yeah, I was just gonna say that in terms of that emotional, like, yeah, I'll even apply one more thing to this story because there was a meme that stuck with me. Like, when you
Mhm.
find a good meme,
Yeah.
it's like it's not enough to just share it. Like you screenshot it, you save it somewhere. Um, and this one stuck with me. It stuck with me big time, where it said, "When you become mature, you no longer seek revenge; you seek
Mhm.
understanding." Right?
Mhm.
And with
Mhm.
him, with the fights that we get into, it wasn't about yelling back at him. It wasn't about being right anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was
Mhm.
like, how could he think that of me? Or how could I think this thing of him? Or
Mhm.
when did we start thinking these things of each other?
About each other. Yeah.
Right? To be honest, and to remember who he is and to remember where he came from was all the kind of help that I think I even in acting or poetry, you do all this research and you want to make sure every line is condensed with the story that you're telling and it's going in this direction. So I think with people kind of right, if they're poems in a way that I'd need to remember what his first lines of his poem were.
Yeah.
I can even understand where he's at right now.
Love how
And
you put that, man. That's
yeah,
yeah.
it feels good. It feels good, man. Because once I can say it and like clarify it, like it feels good. And so I know he was like emotionally hurt as a child and it
Mhm.
hurt, abused, and just like just things where like he wasn't fed as a child sometimes by like the
Yeah.
babysitter or by family members, things like that, where it's just really messed up stuff. And to get to a place where then I know that the emotions he had to learn to control and be the owner of and the boss of and tell them when not to be here or when to be here, um that I saw it as like, wow. So now when he sees emotion in me or my mom or sometimes whoever, sometimes it can feel like a threat, it can feel like an attack if you look at emotions as this threatening thing for you.
Ooh, that's deep, man. That's deep.
Yeah. And
That's deep.
it just kept making more sense when I really dove into who he was and how we talk. And now, like, I'll tell you this now as an update is like, whenever him or even other family members still do that emotional thing with me, and they say something about me being emotional, now I can respond more funny or more poignantly, and I can understand now kind of I think the best way I've been able to do it was something like they said something like, you still my dad said something still like, you still got to work on that sensitivity stuff you get into. And I was like, oh, you mean like being a human being, Dad? You mean like having a good healthy range of emotion that I feel good expressing? Is that what you
Yeah.
mean? And
Yeah.
I'll do that with him and he'll be like, yeah, I mean, and he doesn't know what to say to that, right? It's really
I mean, it's not even that. I I can really resonate with a lot of this. So yeah,
right.
I
I
get
bet you
it.
could, man. Yeah, I
Yeah,
was
I get
man.
it. Oh man. So
Yeah.
do you? Well, you sort of answered it, but
Hmm.
do you feel like your and his relationship have changed and or improved from that time, or like, actually maybe a better way to ask it is, Yeah, has your relationship improved with him overall since you've made more changes within yourself? You know, like do you see different sides of him presenting, maybe just because of how present yourself now, or is it just relatively stagnant and you just kind of doing you, you know?
Definitely not. I'd say, if anything, the kind of willpower I have in loving my dad and loving him through anything is big. It's just
Yeah.
huge. And the same way I know he's loved me, even with the kind of, things in his upbringing that weren't healthy, that he did with us, it definitely wasn't all bad, kind of horrible relationship, right? He still taught certain values that were so amazing and so healthy and so constructive
Mm,
that I would use those things to deconstruct him sometimes. Like,
yeah.
I would use those things to really, really effectively look at what we're doing and how we're doing it and see the holes in it, right?
Yeah.
And I think better than even improving a relationship or like the growth of it, I think I was just able to experience more of it. Like, we have more of a
Mm,
relationship now, you know? Like,
yeah.
because I think if I was sticking to my guns and I didn't want to give in to some things, or he didn't want to give in to some things, then we would be at a standstill a lot, and we wouldn't ask more questions. We wouldn't learn about each other. We wouldn't grow, right? So the fact that I was able to see what his limits were, and he keeps thinking he sees mine. Of course, he still thinks he knows, everything that I need to work on all the time, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
Um, I was still able to ask questions about him and figure out some other past story stuff now,
Yeah.
or ask him like more things about himself that I don't even think sometimes he asks himself about,
Yeah.
what his favorite thing was when he was a kid. Like, what would he do? Or that thing, how did he get through something else that was tough? Or like, just certain experiences that, like, when he told me he was a valet driver and he was like, he could drive stick and stuff like that, I was like, what? This guy is smooth. This is a smooth brother right here.
You
Dang,
like, since when? When did you?
right? I still can't drive stick. Like, I never learned how to do that's like impressive.
Yeah.
And so, he became more of a full person to me, basically.
Yeah.
And that was like, that's probably the most I could ask for. Because whether it's good or bad, moments or times in a relationship, like, the fact that I just know more about him and know, like, I could say that I know so many sides of my dad,
Yeah.
and know that he's not any one thing is really, yeah, that's pretty special. Dang.
Yeah. No, that's really beautiful, man. And honestly, I think um I've had, my own complications even with my father. And just kind of I'll say I'm pretty sure they were probably raised in about the same era. And I'm sure,
Mhm.
there may be a couple of parallels there. And it's just I think what has been interesting, like I can see from some of my own work too, you're right. Like the relationships change when you're able to receive them differently, and I think
Mhm.
that I can start to see that more in friendships, romantic relationships, everything kind of
Yeah.
start to adjust. So do you feel? Have you kind of been on this self actualizing journey for some time, because it
Mhm.
seems like you've really been kind of doing some like self work. And is that from like a process of therapy? Is that just from a process of you just kind of taking that self responsibility to approach it? How did you kind of work yourself into being able to show up the way that you do in that mental space?
Man, that's such a big yo, I have like 472 answers to that. Um, easily. But oh, and first let me give a shout out to my dad in case he watches this, because that man, he might take some of what I said personally. So dad, you're amazing. Okay. I know you've held me when I cried, and you support my emotions a lot. Okay. I'm just talking about the times you haven't. Okay, it's okay. All right. I love you, good guy.
Yeah,
Uh
shout out to you too. I ain't trying to throw no
right,
shots at you,
right.
big bro. You know what I'm saying? Big hill. Don't come for me. I've after the, he was like, who was
Oh, man.
he?
Yeah, who's this guy? Why act like he know me? Like,
You
yeah,
don't even know. I was about to
Harlem.
say, you don't even know me.
From Harlem. He'll tell you what he thinks.
But I'm gonna
Uh,
tell you, truly, honestly, truly, no judgment towards
mm,
anybody. Like,
yeah,
none of this stuff is meant to be personal or attacks towards
absolutely,
anybody. So
absolutely.
straight up,
Yes, and that's a whole nother episode right there. That's
you
a
know.
whole nother thing. Yeah. But yeah, I'll dive into the answer though. Yeah, I'd say yeah. So poetry for sure was my first foray into no my second comic books. I'm
Mm,
gonna shout out comic books right now. Um, and it's bigger than DC or Marvel, people. Okay, it's
uh,
so much bigger. So all these comics I read, I mean, they were talking about multidimensional subjects and different religions and existences and like so many different concepts at that time. I think for my own mind to contemplate and dive into, where Hercules and Thor and like all these kind of bigger than life kind of representations of
yeah,
cultures, right, existed in one place.
yeah.
Um, and then on top of that, to learn about astral projection from
Mm,
Dr. Strange comics way back in the day. And then to learn like, yo, people are really doing that in real life. Like that's a spiritual thing where people can
yeah,
like project their essence and their wait, what are you telling me right now? So again, it's those kind of things where I think comic books opened up my imagination, opened up my world
mm,
like huge, right? And it inspired my love of reading for sure. So shout out to comics for reading and helping kids want to read. Uh,
yeah,
and and then I think poetry to be able to walk in someone's shoes, right? To actually see someone's feelings from another point of view, not just your own, was huge for me. Um, the amount of stories I've dove into, I feel like I've been able to live so many different lives now. I
yeah,
feel like I've been able to know what it's like to be a woman, to be like living in this world as a woman. Even all the amount of poems about women that I've heard and
yeah,
their stories was phenomenal. And then to dive into all the kind of stories I'd say of men and people that didn't know who they were or what they were looking for in life. And you go through these journeys, man. I feel like you get a good 360-degree view now of life.
yeah.
You have so many different angles on it. And then I'd say after that, yeah, I'm gonna shout out acting again, man, because now we're literally telling the story of someone else. Now you're literally like, yo, let me learn all about this person's life, and I'm gonna pretend all of that was me, and then I'm gonna channel that in this experience, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Wow, like yo, like whoa, wow, wow, whoa, whoa. Like I was I was able to find the darkest, most horrible things about me and bring that out for certain roles, or the greatest, most positive traits about me and bring that out for certain roles, right? And that balance into itself to know that we're not all one thing, right?
Yeah.
That was huge. And then I'd say the books, man, the books, Peaceful Warrior, Way of the Peaceful Warrior,
Yeah.
Power of Now. Uh, the Alchemist hit me, but it didn't hit me as hard as it hit a lot of other people. But it's still it came at the right time. It was right
I
at the
like
right
I
time.
like the Alchemist, the Four Agreements.
Four,
That was one that like hit me for real. I was like, you petty for this.
so
That was
petty,
one.
so Tom Petty, so petty.
Yeah. I was like, oh,
Um,
okay, so we just calling things out. Okay, I
yeah,
get it.
yeah, and then saying it with this like deep spiritual, like ancestral connection and the Toltecs, and I'm like, dang, all right, you gonna make all the ancestors call me out too? All
You know
right,
what I'm saying? Be
man,
like,
beautifully done.
and by the
Beautiful.
way, you need to let that go. You'd be like, no. Would it, so what actually I have a question that popped up
Mm,
in my head like do, every time, so you said you've played roles where it's like, maybe they have brought out some of the darker things, some of the brighter things,
mhm,
whatever.
yeah.
Do you feel like you like kind of like recognize or learn lessons about yourself in those moments when you're learning the roles, or is that like a later on reflection kind of thing?
Well, it's both for sure. It's definitely
Mm,
both. because in the middle of the process, you find out how disturbing it is to that you could have creativity in in the darkness of something that someone's committing an action of, right?
Mm,
And especially someone like I remember playing someone that sexually assaulted someone, right?
yeah,
And again, we forget about all these movies where that's the guy in this movie or the person that does this thing. Someone had to do that role. Like someone's
yeah,
gonna have to play that role, right? And this time it was me. And I remember this
mm,
scene and it was like like I checked in with the person that I was acting with for sure enough times and also checking in with myself
yeah,
to make sure that like I knew the moral ground of it, right? To make
yeah,
sure that the story we're telling is not just gratuitous for no reason, right?
yeah,
So even the artistic elements needs they need to be there. Like if it's not there and we're not breaking new ground on something or like it's a story that's already been told, then I tend not to dive into parts like that, you know?
yeah, yeah,
Because it does do a lot for the psyche and against the psyche and all those kind of things. Um, and it also it makes me appreciate how much more women have gone through. It makes me
mhm,
appreciate how much I think even men have gone through when they've done something like that, and
yeah,
the ones that didn't know that they were able or capable to do something like that,
yeah,
right? And that
it-
story isn't like I don't know, it's talked about it's getting talked about more thankfully, but it's one of those things where it's very easy to write people off after a single action
yeah,
and not remembering that they're a whole person too, right?
yeah,
Understandably so, of course. It's a very nuanced kind of situation. So yeah, and then afterwards, the reflection part, I just always want to make sure that I have like the strongest moral compass in doing these kind of roles.
yeah,
What you know, because if that's not centered, then it's like yeah, you'll get lost in the art you're creating, or you won't remember why you're doing the role, and you just get caught up in the emotions of doing things, and it's not anchored. You know.
yeah. No, I mean I just appreciate that entire story, and even to the part of just what realizing the wholeness of those parts, and even I mean, which are in kind of a really deeper way. You're speaking to like all of humanity in that last statement, kind of because I somebody was like, forgot exactly. It was one of my friends, and I'm not picking on vegans. This is just for the example of this, but it was one of my like vegan friends who was basically saying that like they were like kind of saying that just talking about the basically murder aspect of eating meat, where you something is legitimately being killed, and I was like, well, I was like, now I knew for a fact that they killed a lot of bugs because they hate certain bugs. And I was like, well, I was like, did you kill a fly? And it's like, well, yeah. And it's like, well, you got murderer in you. It's not that it doesn't, it's not always on the surface. It's like, but that's a component of who you are because you made a conscious decision, a small or large, that there was
Mhm.
life going on that you decided to end. Now, I'm not making a stake or claim for either one of the arguments, or anything like that, but just more so saying like it's really easy to look at somebody else's faults of humanity or whatever it is, or what we view as them. I think, and it's like a little more difficult to say like we all got a lot of shit up in us,
Mhm.
and based on a whole lot of things, I think that's like the most human thing about stuff is like how do you still um recognize all of that and just move forward as best as you can. So I appreciate that entire story and just so much of what you've spoken through. And look, this can be a 17-hour conversation. I can tell because
Right, right.
I got 1,000 more questions, but I'm gonna limit it to a few. But is there anything you want to tack on?
Oh yeah.
Right.
So yeah, first let me add a few more lists of those books though that helped me out was Celestine Prophecy was phenomenal. And
Mm,
I'd say also Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which had a great blend of comedy, but also this kind of sincerity to life. That was really
Yeah.
cool. And I'd say, you know what? I'm reading right now The Artist's Way, and
Yeah.
it's hitting nice. It's
Yeah.
hitting nicely. And then I'll also throw in Malcolm X, the autobiography of Malcolm X. I got
Yeah. It's a great book.
because someone that doesn't care about where truth comes from, because he's on the search for truth, no matter what, no matter who says it. If it's truth, like, let's talk about it, right? Is such a big concept that's underrated as well. And even actually, and I'll tie it to what you said last about the vegan thing, was that even then I've noticed in those conversations, the point is still being missed. Because if someone's talking about murdering an animal and you bring it up murdering bugs, right? It was one of those things where the point wasn't the murder. It's about how much we're murdering and why we're murdering, and kind of context around the murder, right?
Yeah.
So, like, there's no genocide on bugs that's happening right now. And, and it was like,
except for bees.
yeah,
Save the bees.
yeah, save the bees, right?
No,
And even
I'm
that,
just yeah.
yeah.
But no,
you
I hear
make
you.
jokes
Yeah.
like that.
No. And by the way, I eat
Yeah.
mostly vegan, y'all. So that's like most of my
Yeah.
diet.
Oh, no, that's good to say. That's good to say. Now, yeah, I mean, they're gonna come after you. You already
They are. I'm
upset the
like,
vegan community. It's done.
whatever.
It's a
Just
done
hate
deal.
me. It's fine.
No, but seriously, actually, to tie into that point though, they get that a lot, and I know in the vegan community, I've been in similar conversations actually, where people say, "Oh, you eat plants, but plants have life,"
Yeah.
and it's one of those things where they don't have sentience, right? And to break down that difference to someone and why that matters is almost the equivalent of like you like pointing out the difference between bugs and these cows, right? And some cows, I've seen a cow that jumped like a dog and like licked someone,
Oh,
and
I'm
like,
not even. And let me.
right? That stuff,
And,
but like that stuff is amazing to me when I didn't know how much I didn't understand like what plant-based lifestyle was, but then also the vegan lifestyle, that difference, and how much I really could see animals differently now. Like that blew my mind. That blew my mind.
let me also express before y'all come after me fully. It has nothing to do with the food or the bug. What I'm talking about is the human ability to murder. That's actually what I'm, and I think, but yes, I agree. Like there's and that's a whole we going to spiral. I'm not we about to
I got you.
this could go for a whole we can go into a whole spiral about it. But no, I mean it's just I think well, full circle. Also appreciate the book recommendations. I'm going to shout those out as well, because that's a hell of a list. I'm gonna have to pick up a few. We'll have to share a few.
Oh, and the Tao of Pooh was bomb. The Tao of Pooh, phenomenal.
See, we're gonna send out a list with your episode. You have just send me an email.
Consider it
done. Just give me the
done.
list.
I love sharing books. Yeah.
Now to just kind of switching gears a bit is so you've shared a circumstance about this before, but I'll pose the question in case you want to do it again. Is there a time that you would feel comfortable about just talking about a time that you had to cry or maybe showed vulnerability?
Yeah. Gosh. I mean, I'll talk about a recent one actually. Friend of mine, Patrice, had passed away about a year ago, and kidney complications, and she was living with kidney problems for a number of years. A friend of mine from college, way back. And I got a call from her dad, who had just spent, her first birthday without her. Just spent his first birthday without her. And when I picked up the phone, it wasn't him.
Mm.
It was actually his partner who let me know that he had passed away.
Oh my goodness.
And he had recently had a stroke and complications happened. Just, one of those situations where bad went to worse. And
Mm.
he was, man, like in terms of just good-hearted people doing their best, like that's who these two were. And I think there's something about transitioning and dying and passing away, or whatever you want to call it now, after your daughter passes away, after your child passes away, and how quickly sometimes it happens with people that have a deep love for someone, that it's hard for them to see their life without them, right?
Yeah.
Or like the peace of mind that someone thinks they'll have once they join that other person in this afterlife thing, right? Um and to hear his partner like tell me the story of what happened, and say that, I was thought of highly by him, and
Mm.
that I was one of those people that he could share this stuff about with her, and knew that she had to contact me sooner than later, kind of thing. Like I didn't know I had that kind of impact on him. I wasn't even fully aware of that, and I was just trying to keep in touch with him this last year better than I was before. Um, and I think it reminded me of like the impact we have on each other that we don't know, that we just don't know sometimes. And the times that he reached out to me and I reached out to him, and he was trying, he was trying to set me up with a niece of his, and it was a really sweet conversation, and really just, he was, and I wasn't like, and she lived in New Orleans and all this, and I was just like, we had some good moments about the sincerity of trying to make a love connection, and how I was still healing from a breakup and things like that, and but if I'm ever in New Orleans, I'll say hello on the friendship tip, um, and it's like those conversations, however little, become that much bigger, and
Yeah.
I'm appreciating the ability to remember the good and try to let go of those regrets that I still have, of
Yeah.
how I still wanted to send him some pictures and some screenshots of his daughter's funeral that
Mm.
he wasn't able to get, and work on that forgiveness always, like, because I know he wouldn't want me to get hung up on that.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of us that have people that passed away, we can beat ourselves up in our mind, and no one's really mad at you. No,
Mm.
no one, everyone on this planet, I've noticed, we have this kind of self-torture system built in with regret.
Mhm.
And the sooner we realize that we're the ones pulling that lever all the time on this system, it gets a lot easier, and
Yeah.
I'm able to navigate it a lot better. And it makes me want to do the next thing even better. So, I told his partner, I was like, yeah, I probably need to get that physical done sooner than later that I've been putting off.
Mhm.
I probably need, when Chadwick Boseman passed, you know what? I never thought about getting colonoscopies until now. Like I
Yeah.
probably need to check that out, and really being honest with myself about those things, and not waiting. Because too many of us wait
Yeah.
and think we're okay. And that was my most recent cry and wake up call, and being able to just to really be honest with myself too with that.
Yeah. My condolences, for both of those losses, man. I mean, that's just tragedy on tragedy, but I definitely appreciate you sharing that, and just sharing those moments. And it's also beautiful that you are able to have those memories and that connection and those times as well. So
Yeah,
just thank you for that amount of vulnerability to express what your experience has been like with that. I really do appreciate that.
absolutely. Yeah. And
Okay.
Patrice, and she's one of those people that would encourage that, encourage crying and being honest. So, definitely big rest and power to both of them. And
Yeah. absolutely.
I'll check in with their family too before this comes out to make sure they're okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can always, if there's ever, you can always give a heads up or something. We can all, if there's any modification need. I might be snipping out them vegan lines before they come at me. It's like, nah, bring it. We can
It's all
bring it.
love, damn it. It's all love.
No, bring it. We could have. I'm for good conversation.
Yes.
Um, but no. So another couple questions. One of them being, um, what do you think the world could use more of from men?
Willingness to not care about being right so much
Mm,
and focus on healing everyone. Just especially women, but everyone. I think there's times where in this one poem I even remember this young man put it beautifully. It might be Joshua Bennett, maybe. That might be his
mm,
name, I'm not sure. But it was called 10 Things I Want to Say to a Black Woman. And this poem had this line about we as men have been taught to conquer or dominate everything in our path. And it was one of those lines that just, it's like, it was so grossly beautiful
mm,
how it hit me and how much I knew I wanted to change any part of me that believed in that.
mm-hmm,
How much I knew that the parts of me that cared about competition so much, or the thing about being right, or the thing about even you know I'd say even the times that I know I've passively aggressively made someone feel bad for something that I didn't know I didn't need to do that because I didn't
mm,
learn a different, better way, or I just, or emotionally it felt good to do it maybe in the moment. And then you see the person crumble and you don't want that for anybody,
yeah,
like for anybody. Some of the feelings I felt that someone has hurt me with, I would wish upon no one. And
yeah,
so once I got to that place, I think as men, we have a very big blind spot sometimes with knowing that we don't have to be right so much about things, and that we can still love someone and care about someone and talk to someone, and it doesn't have to be about right or wrong.
mm-hmm,
Um, and to remember that if someone's talking about a bad guy, or men in general, or a woman that's mad at men, it doesn't have to be a personal thing. To not take it personal, I think that's huge. I think when I was able to listen to like 10 poems back to back by women just saying the most awful things about men, like awful, like I was ashamed to be part of the male species for quite some time, a little bit to this day even. Uh Understandably so. Understand, dude, there's guys that have families with multiple women in different states. Like, yo, that's
yeah,
atrocious. You know what I mean? Like that's a thing.
yeah,
And then to remember that it's not about, oh yeah, women can do that too or have done that. No, it's like the fact that we're on the side of the ones doing it that I don't like, doesn't matter. It's the fact that anyone's doing, of course, is awful. But knowing that some part of me could do that as a male, just because I've seen it done, or some part of me like could see the justification of doing that or something, I
yeah,
was like, I need to change that ASAP. I need to
yeah.
change it ASAP. So I think that was the biggest summary of that answer I could give, because that was
No, it's yeah. And
willingness.
so then maybe a flip of that question would be, how do you think that the world helps men to get there?
Mm. I mean, I subscribe to this being a patriarchal world. Like it's mainly been set up for us and run by us for so long, and now that we're sharing or able to even give up some seats of power and actually remember that's okay to not have all the power, not have all the control. Um, I think it's something that we continuously have to teach ourselves. It's not even because the world is us. Like, you know what I mean? It's like that Louis Armstrong thing about people say the world is awful and what about hunger and pollution and all this. And like, wait, that's not the world. That's what we did to the world. You
Yeah,
know, that's the things we did to the world. So I think the ownership and accepting of it is probably going to help us heal ourselves through it
yeah.
and get ourselves through it. You know, um, yeah. Does that make sense? What do you like? Does that
He's like, does that? There's no. You're like, is this? Is that it? Do we? Did I get it? Is there?
like? I mean, I got 15 different ways of saying that. Is what I'm saying. But
No,
I mean,
well, I mean, honestly, the entire conversation and what I actually hope sticks out the most about this talk in general is that all of these points are. It's really about nuance, and it's really about, I think, paying careful attention to ourselves and others, like as much as and these conversations, they're selfishly feeding for me as well in terms of learning from other men and how just like you figured out your ways to process through things. And honestly, like I think what can be beautiful about anybody's life experience is that every single experience that happened to you and every single experience that happened to me has brought us to this point. So the wisdom that you're sharing right now with the world is, like you said, within it being a poem, it's like that's a culmination of every line that you've had written before. So I appreciate and just in full, the whole conversation today, just how much depth you've gone into and just how much you've shared. And I really, really think that there's a lot of guys that'll get great benefit out of this conversation in particular, because you've really been able to just speak to these things well. So
absolutely. Yeah, I'm happy to hear that. Happy to hear that, man.
yeah,
Yeah,
man.
if we're not here for each other, I don't know what we're doing, man. Right? Like that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there any main links or places that you want to send the good people, the listeners at home, where they can check you out more?
Oh, absolutely. I'd say letsbendreality.com is the website. That's just it's a good home base. It has my TED Talk there. It has workshops and how like the descriptions of each workshop that I provide for either one-on-one or for schools, for organizations, for any nonprofits to businesses as well. Like I've seen how much poetry creates community in
Yeah,
an organization, and then I'm just bringing it from an open mic to an organization, essentially that
yeah,
kind of sense of community, right? And I'd say even yeah, I have links to some of the acting work I've done there as well. So it's a good home base. Let's Bend Realities, all my socials, all my YouTube, all my iTunes, all my Spotify's. That's Let's Bend Reality. And I think
awesome.
and I also shout out to educationensemble.org and projectkind123.org.
Mm,
Two great organizations. One's for theater youth, and then one is also not just theater youth, but theater youth that's been marginalized or
mhm.
that we don't talk about their stories enough. And then Project Kind is more with mainly homelessness in New Jersey and resources for people that need them. Um,
Awesome.
so I'm branching out with those two organizations in really good ways, like really helpful ways.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's about it.
awesome. No, man. Well, thank you. I mean, I really appreciate again just everything that you've shared. It's been a great convo. And I meant to ask you, you're based out in Cali, right?
Yeah, I'm in
I thought.
Inglewood, yeah,
Yeah.
California.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, so when I pop up on the West Coast, I'm gonna have to hit you up, and we'll have probably 7-hour philosophical conversation at a coffee shop, I'm sure, or something.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely, man. I mean, I forgot to even tell you about my like the relationship with my brother even and redefining what masculinity is, right? Like that whole thing, like I know that's something you always cover really well in the
yeah.
interview. And I'm looking forward to looking up more of these episodes and seeing what other men have said as well, man. So thank you for this. Thank you for
Well,
this.
oh, absolutely. And honestly, man, I would be curious. Another thing you can do, even with the I Cried When story, and this stands actually, I mean, it's a good segue into this, is in general, guys, we look for a couple ways to submit stories. It can be through holding up a picture and then telling, a story about what you've gone through in terms of vulnerability or mental health or a time that you've cried. And I could definitely see something like that, addressed even with that, or we'll do a follow-up episode too, because like I said, I feel like we can talk forever about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that feel free, to submit even more info about that whole journey, because I think the more and more guys that just do this, right or wrong, I try to keep it judgment free, and just let guys let it out. So
yeah. Yes. Oh my gosh. Well said. You know what? One more shout out to Man Enough. I think you and Man Enough, the podcast series, my friend Jesse, y'all be great to connect as well, because everything you both are talking about is so specifically about holding that space for us men, and holding that space for emotion and honesty. So again, much respect, man. I'll be supporting this a lot more, and I hope everyone out listening, it's a lot easier than you think to take that picture and share a story and really connect with a part of yourself that maybe you didn't even know you had, that will feel so good letting out, y'all. Guaranteed your money back. Guaranteed.
Yeah. Guarantee on that. That's for real. But thank you, man. I appreciate just all of the time, all of the convo today. And let's be in touch and keep the conversations going, man.
Deal. Not a problem, man.
So, all right, signing off from the How Men Cry podcast. Play us a little outro. Kick us both out the room real quick. Boom, boom.
Yeah, a long way from a stuttering kid. I didn't get enough